Hello and welcome to Teaching Hourly. I'm Jonathan Stark. Today I am joined by repeat offender, Tim Dietrich. Tim, have we both been on this show before, or am I thinking of other shows?
So you were on the podcast that Eric Grubauer and I were doing called Sweet Script Stories. That was actually in Q1 of 2024, and you did 2 episodes.
Cool. Yeah, we've had so many conversations, it's tough to tell which ones were on the podcast and which ones weren't.
Yeah. But we've known each other for 20 years on it. I mean, our paths have crossed. So that's kind of wild. Yeah.
Back in the FileMaker days. So folks, we're going to talk about a bunch of different things today. So this is going to be kind of a catch-up call between Tim and I. But I know it's going to be very useful for people because a couple of topics that I'm sure are going to come up are common topics, common questions that I get. Pivoting your positioning, knowing when to do it, or maybe not. Maybe it just happens to you. And, how can you kind of orchestrate such a thing, perhaps more intentionally. Also, perhaps we'll talk about the business models around it and maybe even a change of business model in the future. So stay tuned for all that. But first, Tim, could you give folks a little bit of background about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So my name's Tim Dietrich. I'm one of those, I think, odd people who has always known what he's wanted to do. I go all the way back to like 6th grade when I first started, programming or learning programming. And, I knew that was what I wanted to do. And I'm doing it. So basically I am mostly a software developer with a focus on NetSuite. So I've got the platform specialization, I think you refer to it as.
Yep.
I can talk a little bit about how I fell into that, but, I went to college, got a degree in all this. And I don't know very many people who are doing what they went to college for, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, it's rare.
And I think what's even more strange about me is the fact that after all these years, I still love what I do. Like writing code is my thing. That's when I get into the flow state. I can't imagine not doing it, but at the same time, and we could talk about this when you want, it gets to be a little much. There's so much demand for the kind of work that I'm doing, especially in the NetSuite space. And that's what a first world problem. It's a good problem to have, but it's a problem, because I don't know when to stop. I'm a workaholic. So.
Yeah. Well, we love what you do, right? Okay. So you texted me in Ditcherville DM'd me in Ditcherville about maybe jumping on a call. So what was the premise? What was the thing that made that occur to you?
Well, so at some point, and this is kind of when our paths had crossed, I think going back, I think when you were on the other podcast, I had sat down and tried to figure it out, but I had met you at one of the FileMaker conferences. I think it was like in 2017.
Yeah, it was in a weird location. It was an unusual spot for that conference.
I think it was San Diego. Was it San Diego? No, I don't know. I think it may have been Orlando. In any case, I had been a follower of yours, an admirer of yours, because you and I were both doing the same kind of work. We were kind of doing web integration with FileMaker, pushing the limits there. And you had written that awesome book, which I had referred to as my sort of FileMaker Bible, which I still have and still use. I don't have it printed.
I don't even have it. I don't think I have it.
Yeah, that was just so helpful. And anyway, you were I think our paths were going in similar directions, but you had started to make that shift away from FileMaker and were starting to do the hourly billing, thing and value add, that kind of stuff. And at the time, I still am solo, but I was struggling to keep up with the demand. And so just by happenstance, like you and I got on the same elevator together at the end of like one of those long day of sessions, and we were riding up, and I had introduced myself. I'm not usually somebody that does that. I'm very shy. But anyway, we got to talking, and I said, I don't know what to do. Like this again sounds like a first world problem, but I was so busy, and I was like, I'm under constant pressure to hire people to fill the gap, right? To meet the demand. And you gave me a piece of advice I still remember to this day. It was pretty much, you don't have to hire people. You don't have to grow. You can stay solo, and it's your prerogative to do that. And I felt like, phew, like it's like I don't know, you let me off the hook or something.
It is the prevailing wisdom. It's the prevailing wisdom is like, oh, if you got demand, then hire. But hiring is a trap in many ways.
Yeah. And I'm not a people person. I don't like to manage people. I don't like to be managed. It's like I'm the worst employee in the world. So anyway, it was sort of a relief. And that's how we first met. And then I kind of, my I guess, FileMaker path kind of followed yours a little bit. I ended up writing a book. You reach a point, I think, in that kind of that area where you feel like you've peaked. I think you and I actually had talked about that at one point too, where you just kind of reach a point where you're like, okay, what's next? Like technically it wasn't challenging.
Right.
I didn't feel like I was hitting a ceiling. And then I got lucky in that a client of mine who I'd had for, 20 years at that time, kind of grew overnight through an acquisition. And they went from I think a $10 million to like a $30 million business overnight. Neither one of the two companies that were merging had a system that could handle the combined business. Long story short, that's how I ended up getting involved in NetSuite, which is a big ERP system, like a business system, for those of you who don't know what that is. And I helped them kind of navigate looking at the options and eventually landing on NetSuite. At some point, if you want, I could talk about why, but that led to me getting involved in helping them kind of switch to that system, integrate some of the, I'll call it their like sort of secret sauce systems that were still in FileMaker that needed to integrate with NetSuite. I think some of them probably still do years later, which is, interesting too. But anyway, that was kind of how I started to make that switch to NetSuite. And I didn't think I was going to like it because for years I'd been a custom software developer. You remember what it's like. You'd start to create a new FileMaker database and there's that file new. And it's like you're starting with a blank slate.
So exciting, right?
It is, yeah. So I thought, well, this isn't what I do. Like it's already built. Like what, where am I going to add value? Well, it turns out there's a lot of opportunity there for custom software. And so that's how I started to, make that pivot. I got really lucky.
So I'm going to push back on the luck because there's one thing that you obviously did that a lot of people wouldn't do, which is you, for some reason, had the confidence that you could help this client with a selection of a platform that you had no experience with. So, and that you basically had the confidence to like, oh, I can figure it out. And you probably, having worked with them, you probably knew a ton about their business logic and all that really hard to uncover stuff. And you're like, well, I'll just figure it out inside of this new thing. Is that a fair characterization of the situation, or did you know more about it than I think?
I think some of that is right. What I did know is that the client had kind of grown their business on FileMaker. And so they were used to being able to go to both an in-house or a contract developer and say, okay, we're doing something different today. We picked up this new customer and we need all these customizations done. Mm-hmm. So knowing just that part of it helped me when we were looking at the options that they had. It was clear to me that NetSuite was the one that could handle that kind of ad hoc, the customization side of it, that other ones were really kind of tight. Like you couldn't easily do that.
Yeah.
As far as having the confidence to pick up the platform, to learn NetSuite, like again, at first, I didn't think I was going to like it. So I kind of went into it. And if you've got kids, you know what I mean? Like they've already made up in their head, I don't want to try that new food because I know I don't like it. Yeah. Like, how do you know? That was me. And then the fact that it was JavaScript based I was just like,
that's a huge leap.
It was a huge leap. I really, again, like to this day, I mean, I get why it's so popular, but at the same time, I'm just like, are we really here? Like, is this as good as it gets? So I didn't really have the confidence that I could pick it up well, but I knew what I was interested in, and that was being able to bolt on things to it, or again, like with this client, help them integrate an external system to it. There were people doing it at the time.
What year would this have been? Because I recall that it was still kind of early in the NetSuite.
It was 2016. 2017, I think.
So yeah, my recollection is that NetSuite was starting to really make a name for itself around then. I had started to hear about it, but it was certainly not the biggest ERP around.
Yeah.
And you were it felt like you were kind of early to the game, because I remember that you weren't certified, and yet they were referring people to you.
Yeah. So they've been around for a long time. I don't know exactly what year it was, but NetSuite really started off as if you think of QuickBooks, where it's, QuickBooks was at first a desktop app. Well, NetSuite was the first online sort of general ledger / accounting system.
Huh.
And so it kind of grew from there, so now it does everything. And it's been around for a while. So I don't really want to say that I was in front of that. If anything, I felt like when I discovered, and I don't feel that's not really the right word, but when I started to learn about NetSuite, I'm like, how did I not hear about this sooner? It was Oracle buying them that I think really, kind of gave them the boost. So there's that. And right now there's there's 43,000 companies running on NetSuite.
That's not cheap neither.
Crazy. It is not cheap. And that's the other thing. It kind of took, for those FileMaker people who still follow you, and I know there's a lot, it took that mindset too. I had to stop thinking about trying to service small businesses, because that's not what this is, right? And if you're a mom and pop shop, you're not, if you're running on NetSuite, something's wrong. Right? Yeah. So I had to kind of shift that a little bit and start thinking about the kinds of companies that are running on it. And some of them are big companies, and some of them are startups that deliberately pick things like NetSuite because they're hoping that at some point, if they go to get acquired, somebody will they'll do their due diligence, and then it's like, oh, they're running on NetSuite, so there's a check, on the big list of. So, and as crazy as that sounds, it's the truth. So,
okay, so yeah, we don't need to go too far, but so then what happened next? So after that, you started to. I remember around that time you were like, I am slammed.
Yeah, I was book solid from the moment I kind of sheepishly hung my, hey, I'm doing NetSuite now, shingle out, right? I changed my LinkedIn, I changed my homepage. If you had seen it then, and one day I'm FileMaker, the next day I'm doing NetSuite. And again, very sheepishly did that because I'm like, I was learning as I went. So I really dug into the integration side of it. And then where things really, I guess, changed for me, that was 2017. And then it was, I think, early 2020. I feel like that date's wrong, but I was doing beta testing on one of the, NetSuite does one of those release models where there's 2 releases, big releases each year. And I was beta testing one of them for a client, and I saw that they had support for SQL. And I've been a SQL, developer for a long time, even before FileMaker. And I always felt like whenever I wanted to get data out in NetSuite, the fact that I couldn't write a query, it drove me nuts. It was kind of like query by the QBE thing, right? It's like, yeah. So anyway, now I'm like, well, really? I can write SQL? So I started playing with that, and it was like the floodgates opened. It was like, oh, wow, finally I can start to use some of the skills that I had before, with what I'm doing in NetSuite. And I started just blogging about it. I actually would write little blog posts about here's the table to use to find your employees, or, whatever. Here's how to do a join, and it seems really basic, but the NetSuite, for the most part, most NetSuite developers have never had any exposure to that. They're not even really web developers. They're kind of JavaScript developers trapped in the NetSuite box, if you will. So their perspective was like, I don't know what SQL is.
Right.
So I started writing about it. I was also, there was no tooling around it. There was no easy way to run a query. So the first one, I remember, sounds so funny, but it was like a PHP app that I developed that it had just a big text area and a button. And you write your query in it, you hit the button, and behind the scenes, it would send the query to NetSuite and then bring back the response. And that was pretty cool. And then I thought, well, that's good, but I really need to be inside NetSuite when this is running for technical reasons. So I wrote that tool and then made it available as open source. And that's when things
just like an arbitrary query tool that could plug in.
And then I, made it nicer so you could save your queries, so you could pull them back up later, and gave you a way to kind of see the schema and, things that like you would think, well, how is that not already in there? Well, it wasn't. Still isn't really.
Wow.
Like the tool that I wrote after all these years is kind of long in the tooth, but I get like almost every week somebody writes like, thanks for writing that tool, making it available.
Wow.
Like, you're welcome.
So let's dwell on that for a second. And the step before it. So if I remember correctly, it's kind of expensive even to have a NetSuite like dev account or something. Like you have to have you have to be certified, and it's expensive to have one. So you were kind of piggybacking on a client installation, I assume, testing it for them inside there. Hopefully we're not outing you or something that's not supposed to be done.
No. So they call that a sandbox account in NetSuite terms. And then the other thing about it is that when NetSuite is announcing or getting prepared to release one of those sort of twice yearly, new releases, they give you a special account to do that testing on ahead of time. And that's what I had been using for a lot of that. So, it was safe. But yeah, that's another place where I've been really lucky. I am not certified in NetSuite even to this day. I'm not a partner. And we could, if at some point you want to talk about that too, there are certain advantages to being distanced from the platform, right? Like,
especially in an advisory capacity, because you're not you don't care. It's like, no skin
right.
off
I'm not trying to sell NetSuite,
right.
And I never would.
Right.
So, it's not that I don't recommend it, but I know what it's good at and what it's not. I don't have any particular allegiance to them, but.
So you said you started blogging, but so you started to get this like early. You're like, oh, this is great. I already know SQL, and so it's stuff. So doing basic stuff for you was obvious, but for most people not. When you were blogging about it, where were you posting?
So I was blogging on my own site, and then I had started, sort of finally really started to pay attention to LinkedIn a little bit. There's like, as far as the NetSuite community goes, I think LinkedIn is kind of the go-to social media platform.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, I had used LinkedIn, but it wasn't really my focus. But I was also trying to do a couple of things. I'm trying to reboot myself, reinvent myself as now I'm the NetSuite guy. So I started to pay more attention to LinkedIn, and I would blog on my site, post something, and then I'd give a summary on LinkedIn with a link back to the blog. And just over time, I started to get traction and started to get followers, and that even to this day, like my blog, my LinkedIn, and that occasionally giving away like the kind of software I described, the kind of open source, if you will, that's my marketing plan, or that's it.
And who's your reader though? Your reader's not the buyer, is it? It's other developers.
It's interesting because I do have a paid account on LinkedIn, because that does give you visibility into your followers and things that you wouldn't normally get. So if you're one of those people out there that's interested in LinkedIn and wondering whether you should pay for it or not, if you're like me and it's your only source, like real social media source, it's not all that expensive. It's worth it.
Mm-hmm.
But it does give me visibility into those, like who's following me. And you'd be surprised. It's not just techies. It's, CFOs, CEOs, salespeople. It runs the gamut, and it's worldwide. That's the other thing. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, good. Surprising, but good.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so then what happens? So you're starting to get leads through LinkedIn. People like, what was the next step in your air quotes funnel? So like they see you on LinkedIn or they see your blog, and there's a contact me button or something simple.
I wish I was that sophisticated.
Here's my phone number.
It was just sort of like, they would either DM me or email me. I used to encourage people, hey, if you've got a question about this blog post, email me.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped doing that a long time ago because it just blew up, and it got to the point where I have pretty much been booked solid, for years. It's to the point of, when I say book solid, I'm not saying 40 hours a week. I'm talking like 50, 60, 70. It's crazy. So it kind of got to the point where I would blog and kind of I hope nobody reaches out to me. If they've got a question, great, whatever. I'm happy to kind of help if I can. But if you're reaching out to me to hire me,
Yeah.
let's talk in a year kind of thing.
Right.
Right. So I feel like I'm kind of bragging, but it was like, it's a good problem to have, but.
Well, the phenomenon is right. So for people listening, there's a lot of timing involved here. I don't know this for a fact, but my instinct and my experience tell me that the fact that you were so early to like this big new feature, for example, or you sheepishly changed your LinkedIn profile when there was a monster demand for NetSuite developers and there wasn't enough supply.
Yeah.
And like that is super important, especially I suppose in general, but with a platform specialization, that is a critical piece. And so what's really cool, I just wanted to call out, is that so you had this first wave of like, I'm a NetSuite developer. You need NetSuite stuff done, reach out. Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then that is going to be a certain wave. And then there's going to be all of these new NetSuite developers minted in the next 2 or 3 years. And all of a sudden you're not the only game in town. And maybe it's tougher to tell the difference between you and someone else. And now here comes this big new feature and you jumped on that bandwagon early, created a tool for it, open sourced it, and you were leveraging this past experience with something that all of these sort of like NetSuite native JavaScript developers SQL is like a completely different mindset. It's a totally different mental model. So now all of a sudden you've kind of jumped to the next growth curve, in my opinion, where it's like, and it might not have worked. Maybe the feature could have flopped or no one cared or whatever, but you jump to the next growth curve. And not to foreshadow things too much, but you're jumping to the next growth curve now. So what happened?
Yeah.
Tell us the story about the feeling of what it was like when the SQL stuff started to land and you were, were you getting the same, like, was that just another way to differentiate yourself from everyone else and you weren't actually doing that much SQL for people, or did the nature of the work actually change when your positioning changed?
It actually, I feel like everything really changed. I had been doing a lot of integration work prior to really sort of stumbling upon the ability to run SQL both in and outside of the platform. So the performance of the apps I was developing changed and the way I wrote them changed. I ended up putting out like another open source, it's actually a web API for NetSuite that kind of had the ability to run queries like baked right in. It's not that NetSuite's own web APIs couldn't do that, but mine was just dead simple and the response time was better. So, that was interesting. So my work did change a little bit. It was a little bit scary because I didn't have anybody to bounce this stuff off of, right? I had to just keep trying it and kind of wrote blog posts saying, well, your mileage may vary, right? Like, because that's the other thing is these queries that I would share, and even to this day, this is true. I tried to make them kind of, agnostic as far as what the NetSuite instance that you were running them on, would it work in 99% of them? That's what I went for. But the customizations that might have happened in somebody's NetSuite instance could cause the query not to work. That and the fact that they may have things enabled or modules that they've bought that, there's like a bunch of different
Just
tax
a million
engines.
edge cases.
Yeah. So it was tough and it was a little bit frightening, and I'd have to like word it that way that again, I'm just like you guys. I'm feeling my way through this. I just happen to have used SQL before, so I know how to do the joins. I know all that good stuff.
And now I don't know if this matters, but I'm dying of curiosity. Like, that must have been a major decision for NetSuite to open up direct SQL access to the underlying database. So is there a lot of guardrails on it, or?
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, it's read only. And there were other ways.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a big one, right? Yeah. I mean, that's a wall. That's like a dead end, do not, whatever.
Okay, that explains a lot.
You could run queries. They have an ODBC option. So that was at the time, or prior to them having what they call SuiteQL, that was the only way to actually use SQL. But it was very few accounts had that. and it's ODBC, JDBC. So if you remember back to the FileMaker days, it's like kind of a pain to work with.
Yeah, exactly.
And with that, that was a paid option, again, that not a lot of NetSuite customers had. Whereas this new SuiteQL, they call it, it was just there by default. So there was that.
Okay, so you it was changing the nature of your work. So people are calling you because they had customizations or whatever that needed direct attention.
Yeah, I started to take, I had to put the brakes on taking development work, but I took out many times I've taken pages out of your different books, and I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll offer consulting, and I started to do 1 hour SuiteQL consulting. Again, very sheepishly did it, kind of quietly offered it. When people would email me, I'd be like, hey, I'm willing to help you, and my price started here, and then it got there, and I don't know if your readers they can't see me, but
it started small, got
going
big.
Up.
Yeah.
Yeah. It got to the point where I was like, I can't believe I'm charging what I'm charging for an hour to just talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was more than that, obviously. But that was the first for me. I have always been one of those people who was afraid to charge what I should have been charging all along.
Yeah, I'm sure in the elevator I said to you, you don't need to grow, you need to double your prices. And
I think you did, and I was like, well, let's take the first step of it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but so I had to, I got to the point where I'm like, an hour out of my day, I mean, how disruptive that can be. Yeah. It's not an hour.
It nukes your whole morning, probably.
Yeah, and I would come out of those hour-long calls like, I have never been on stage as a performer, but I can just imagine that, like, if you're up there, like you're a comedian and you come off stage, you're like, okay, I need to go home and take a nap, right? That's how it felt for me with those sessions, because you never knew what somebody was going to ask you. You're on the spot. The spotlight's on you. Sometimes it would be one person. Sometimes it would be a team. You just never knew.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I still do those to this day, not as often. I'm doing them now, like to kind of move along to the next thing. Like I'm doing them now for some of the AI stuff that I'm doing, but the pricing is out. Like I'm embarrassed by I feel like I'm getting away with something, like with what I charge. But yeah, it was very different and unexpected. I didn't imagine when I started writing the SQL stuff in NetSuite that I would be giving consulting calls.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of became known as the SuiteQL guy. People started, oh, you're the SuiteQL guy.
Am I? I am? Okay.
What? Really?
Right.
When did that happen? I didn't know. So it's pretty cool.
Where would that be getting reflected back to you? Like in person at a conference? Did you go to conferences?
I haven't. I've never been to a NetSuite conference, which is funny because they just had one last week. But yeah, it would be on calls or people would DM me or they would refer to me that way on the, on the different like platform, like there's a Reddit, there's a Slack team for the communities, those kinds of things. And yeah.
So just you're positioned in their minds as like horizontal. It's almost like you're starting in that particular positioning. It's almost like a horizontal specialization on top of a platform specialization.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, it's very interesting because, it almost becomes a horizontal, but you do still have that platform lift, which is great. But you jump to this different growth curve, which it might not have grown, it might not have become popular, but it did.
Right.
So,
and that's a really interesting way. I've never really thought about that before. The interesting thing about SuiteQL, and again, that's what NetSuite calls their sort of brand of SQL, is that it's just different enough that you do have to, like, you're bringing over your skills, your sort of standard SQL skills, but, NetSuite has taken liberties with the standard, so there's nuances to it and functions they've added and stuff like that. So it was, some stuff to learn. But again, I think in my lifetime, I've probably written more SQL queries than I have English. I mean, it's baked into me. So
what? So did it? What year was this when they came out with that feature? When you're beta testing it? 20?
I want to say it was 2020, maybe late 2019. I remember taking my son. He was taking guitar lessons. You'll love this. He was taking guitar lessons, and I would go and like find a place to work while I was waiting for him to finish. And I remember sitting there doing the beta testing, trying to get it to work. And I remember having like one of those eureka moments where it finally connected and I ran like the SQL equivalent of Hello World.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Like I
Select
was
all
actually
from.
sitting in a McDonald's of all places, waiting for him to be done with his class. And so anyway.
So that's, as we're recording this, 5 years ago. So did that reach a plateau where other people started to get it and other developers were offering this as a thing? And did it start to tail off, or?
Yeah, I mean, you started to see other tools, similar tools being developed and offered, people starting to write about it, so you would see blog posts about it, that sort of thing. I know that there were conferences at Suite World, which is their big event, because they would often reach out to me and say, hey, we want to use your tool, or, we want to reference, whatever. So that was pretty cool. What was really like when I knew that things had sort of tipped or I'd sort of reached the peak was when you actually had people from Oracle / NetSuite reaching out to me, asking me questions about SuiteQL. And I was like, really? Like, I don't know. I still, to this day, I'm shocked by that, but it was really cool. I had people reach out to me in positions that I never thought I'd interact with, I won't say who they are because I don't want to get them in trouble, but
right.
But yeah, it was kind of neat. And then, I started getting referrals from NetSuite, and I'm not a partner. So, it was like, oh, this is weird. But it was all very shocking, flattering, scary, So I'm just like, okay, I'm going to ride it out. And
how many like clients, like non-consulting call, non-advisory, like actual, you're writing queries or you're doing integrations still. How many of those did you have around that time? Let's say 2021, 2022, when you're really known as the SuiteQL guy. And how much had your work, the nature of the work, pivoted over that period?
It was 100% NetSuite by that time. I did have, this is interesting too, I actually did and still do have some clients that, NetSuite clients that came to me who run FileMaker solutions and recognized me from the work I used to do in the FileMaker world. So that was pretty cool because I got to do exactly what I was hoping to do, which is integrate, in this case, a platform that I knew from the past with NetSuite. So there was that. But I think at the peak of that, I had maybe 10 or 12 clients, way too many. I would work on a project. Yeah. Some of them were bigger than others. Some of them were shorter than others in terms of how long is it going to take me to do this? And I think I could say for just probably my entire career, I got really lucky in that some of those projects sort of went into maintenance mode. And then when there would be something that somebody would need, I would usually have enough bandwidth to deal with it. Now I've pulled that way back. I don't know if it's wisdom,
self-preservation,
or just stupidity. Yeah. I mean, it's is it I'm getting older and just can't, make that mental shift, because the interesting, and I think you remember how this was in FileMaker too, even though you're using the same tools, the same platform, you've got clients that do potentially a gazillion different things. Yeah. And so while you're still in your space in terms of the tech, one of them might be a distributor, the other one's a services company, this one's a retailer with multiple locations.
Lawyer, ad agency, teacher group.
Right. Multi-currency, multi-location.
Yeah.
So you're,
business logic's all over the place.
Yeah. You're putting the NetSuite hat on and taking it off, but it's a sombrero and a fire hat and a policeman. You know what I mean? It's that context shift is tough, whether it's a project or calls. If I had back-to-back calls with NetSuite clients, it's hard.
Yeah.
So, I've kind of, pulled that back a little bit. I haven't taken a new NetSuite client. Yeah, I haven't taken a new NetSuite client on since late summer of last year. And this might shock you, is that I think it's my last one, because it's a years-long NetSuite implementation. And I'm at a point where that, I feel like that's my day job.
Right.
And then my night job is occasionally putting out the fires with the clients the other clients I have that I still support. And then there's not much time for my, sort of side projects, if you will. And that's what really keeps me going, is those things. So,
okay. So you've got this sort of new thing happening, right? So the AI angle, new growth curve potentially. And I don't know if we said it before the show or on the show, that it feels to you like the SuiteQL thing did, but this time you are more intentional, or at least you're aware of it happening in real time instead of realizing 6 months later that you became the SuiteQL guy.
Yeah.
What's the current state of affairs for you and your business with whatever? I mean, first tell people what the AI capabilities of NetSuite maybe are, just so we have a context.
Well, let me start by saying, I think this is really funny and ironic, which was that we mentioned a couple of times that there was the podcast that Eric, who's another NetSuite developer, he and I had done for a few years, and you were on it twice. I think it was, I want to say maybe like Q2 of last year. I don't know the exact date. Things just blur together. But we had done a podcast about generative AI and what that might mean to the NetSuite platform, especially to developers. Every developer you talk to is afraid they're going to lose their job. That's a whole other episode.
Right.
But I have been very skeptical of AI. I'm tired of hearing about it, or I was at the time. I was like, I even said to Eric, I don't even know if we should do that. I'm going to be the most negative person in the world. And I could send you a link. If you go back and listen to it, you probably think, yeah, Tim just hated AI. So kind of fast forward a little bit. I think it was early this spring or whatever, NetSuite built in some AI capabilities for developers into the platform so you could start to kind of mess around with it. And I didn't really know anything about it. I started playing with it. And one of the first things I had it do, I wrote a little sort of chat bot within NetSuite for it. And I'm like, okay, tell me who my top customers are. And it said, sorry, I don't know anything about your business. And I'm like, what, really? I thought that was the whole point.
Yeah.
It turns out it was kind of a really limited capability where you could use it to say I'm looking at an item that's being set up in NetSuite, and you're like, write me the description for it. It was that basic, right? So anyway, I was like, okay, well, I got that out of my system.
Mm-hmm.
But then the AI thing just kept, you get to a point where you're like, oh, okay, there must be something to this that I'm not saying. And finally, I kind of conceded and started messing around with ChatGPT. What really did it for me was playing with the API and actually sending it a prompt. And so long story short, I eventually figured out, okay, here's what it's really good for. And in the NetSuite world, if I can feed it reports and financial data and say, tell me how my company's doing, that's what it's like. I was like, okay, it's really good at that.
Really good at summarizing things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was over the summer. I kind of started messing around with that. And then I'm calling it my sort of summer of AI because I started working on a product for it, and it's been nuts.
Oh, wait, so product, is this another open source idea to kind of cement yourself? Okay.
And the things are moving so quickly in the NetSuite AI space that the product I was working on pretty much got squashed almost right away. It's again, a whole other episode, but it was interesting. But what did happen is I started to it's very similar to what I was doing with SuiteQL. I started to share the prompts that I was using to test initially the product. And then they now have a way for you to link using MCP. You can use ChatGPT and tie it to NetSuite to kind of. So I started to share the prompts that I was using to get these really amazing, insightful reports that also happened to look really good. I figured that part out. And so it was almost just like what I was doing with the queries, where I was just sharing, as I'm learning.
Yeah. Learning in public or working in public. It's like a proven approach. Yeah.
Except that it took off like wildfire. And I was like, this feels like what I dealt with SuiteQL.
So what specifically, what was that? Like, was it viral LinkedIn posts? Like, what's the wildfire? Is it email inbox filling up?
A little bit of both, but LinkedIn just, took off. I had one day where I had like 40,000 impressions in a day. People that wanted to link to me, and I don't know, generally if that's a lot. For me, it's a lot.
That's a good.
Yeah, right. And it's also, you got to think about who it is, right? These are all NetSuite people.
Right.
It's my tribe, if you will. They're all like, oh. And then, the people that were reaching out to me that wanted to connect or would DM me, it was who they were. Not your average just NetSuite developer, but
these are buyers.
So that was really interesting. So I started to recognize that, again, this felt very much like what I had done before, except this time I was smart enough to say, okay, it's kind of like, I guess I've never been a surf person or whatever, but I would kind of imagine like when you see the wave coming and you're like, okay, I know what this was going to be.
Yeah.
That's how it felt, right? So I went into it a little bit more educated, but still completely unprepared. It's been nuts. So, and that's why I reached out to you, right? So before we go into that.
Right. So that's, okay, so parallel from my world, much bigger time frame difference. So yours is roughly a 3-year period between the SuiteQL and the NetSuite AI. And when mobile came out, I watched mobile was my first big full pivot after FileMaker. So I went from FileMaker to like FileMaker PHP, FileMaker Web, those integrations and stuff, because that was a new feature that they had rolled out. Same thing. We sort of like FileMaker got boring, but they released this to me, but then they released this huge new feature, and I was trying to get my web development skills together anyway. So this was an excuse to get paid to do that. So there weren't that many people positioned as like FileMaker web people. It was like, it doesn't matter, iViking, Chris and from the Moyer group. It's been so long.
Yeah. Some of the FileMaker conferences, we had
Steve.
like a tiny little room. There was like 10 or 12 of us, and that was it.
Yeah.
None of us knew what we were doing, but we'd show like cool calendars.
Right.
So anyway.
But I was, so with that half pivot from FileMaker to kind of like web FileMaker integrations for real.
Yeah.
That was really exciting to me. I was still really a technician. I wasn't thinking as like an entrepreneur. And I was like, that was really exciting. So I just sort of followed my bliss into that. I was still loving coding. I was really loving coding still back then. Then when the iPhone came out, like you said, you always knew what you wanted to do. I don't know if I always knew what I wanted to do, but when I saw that announcement, I was like, that's what I'm doing. That's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I totally see the use case. I didn't know if it was going to be big or not. I didn't care. I was like, I'm doing that. I'm making websites for that thing right there. And Jobs even said, and I was a web developer for real at that point, and he said at the announcement that the apps for this device are going to be web apps. And I was like over the moon. They ended up backtracking on that pretty quickly, but
I remember that, being disappointed when he did.
Super disappointed. I was pissed.
Yeah.
So obviously he made the right choice in terms of for them.
I guess it depends on how you, for them.
Depends on how you look at it. For them, it was a smart choice. Walled garden, baby. So at any rate, still, I'm just like doing the thing that I can't stop myself from doing this. If I wasn't getting paid for it, I would have been doing it anyway. How do you make a website that works great on this little thing with no mouse? So that was just super fun. And then there were some big waves after that. There was sort of in the hype cycle, Gartner hype cycle. There was AR, VR, there was blockchain, crypto, there was metaverse and Web3 and all of this stuff. And I'm like, I watched them. I did maybe a proof of concept here and there. Smart contracts with Ethereum kind of blew my mind, but I was like, do I really want to do that? I'm not that interested in it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But I'm like, like a variable that has money in it, that's kind of bonkers. But it was kind of like, these are all kind of nerdy and technical, and I don't really see the use case. And then the first time I saw ChatGPT, I was like, this is mobile all over again. Like, so, and when you say the wave, like I don't know if I saw the mobile wave coming. I don't think I did. I don't think I cared. But having gone through it, I was like, holy mackerel, did I just ride a giant wave? And it crashed in around 2011, 2012, when all of this stuff that I had figured out early on about how, me and a short list of other people which basically became responsive web design. Ethan Marcotte kind of called it responsive web design.
Yeah.
And by the time that all happened, it just got built into WordPress and it got built into SAP and it got built into everything. And there were all these MDMs. All the giant companies got on board with their platform play and the enterprise. So anyway, so I was like, okay, I rode that wave. The wave is it's crashed for a soloist. So then it's like, but I was just totally unaware of it. Sort of in retrospect, I recognized it. But when I saw the AI stuff, I'm like, here comes another one. I don't know if I want to ride it, but this is another one for sure. And it's not like blockchain. It's not like crypto. Those things will probably be around for a long time. But this is a monster wave. And if it went away tomorrow, I wouldn't care. But I don't think it's going to go away tomorrow. And I think it is going to, it's got problems, all kinds of problems. But it is like a complete, I mean, the thing about it was the biggest wave before that was blockchain. And the difference between the two things to me is that there are a billion use cases where blockchain always looked like a solution in search of a problem.
Yeah.
And the problem that everyone would point to is basically only a problem for like libertarian hackers. So like, but then when my kids were using ChatGPT before I even heard of it, I was like, okay, this is going to be huge. Kind of like the first time a grandma asked me to set up her email in the 90s. I was like, why? And she was like, so I can get pictures of my grandkids. And I'm like, this is going to be huge. Email's going to be huge because like a completely non-technical person has a clear use case for it. Same with the kids with ChatGPT. Yeah. So point being, with some age, perhaps you can start to see these waves coming. It doesn't matter if it's AI or something else. It could be whatever, flying cars, but you're like, okay, this is going to be a big wave. And then and I feel like the main trick with riding them is that, just for the listener, the thing with a wave like AI is that positioning yourself as someone who's on the cutting edge of it is a horizontal specialization, but you're massively benefiting from the fact that basically no one's an expert because it's brand new, right? So there are experts that are building it, but they're building it. They're not consulting. They're not doing client work. So it's the same with like FileMaker or any of them. Like there were people at Apple that knew more about the Safari browser than I did, but they're not looking for clients.
Right.
So with something like ChatGPT, it's critically important, whatever the wave is, it's critically important to be, let's say there are massive benefits to being an early mover and establishing that reputation when there's like 4 people on the playing field. There's no one around. And you can legitimately call yourself one of the best in the world at doing this thing that you might sheepishly know that you're just like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but this is what your mileage may vary. This is what's working for me now. But if you do, if you do that in 2 years, it's not going to do anything. No one, it's like, you're whatever, buddy, like that already happened. You're way behind that curve.
The boat has sailed.
Right. So your timing, your instincts, or let's say certainly your capacity to recognize it happening in real time to yourself is, that's a shift. So having said all of that, one could imagine a business model change that comes along with it. So what are the questions that you have around, now that you know that it's happening and you can be more intentional about it? What are the challenges that presents, or what sort of obstacles do you see?
Well, so I think there are a lot of parallels, not only with like what I'm going through right now with the AI stuff and what I talked about with the being the SuiteQL guy, but also just the technology too. Like it feels to me like, you remember when the web, we'll both show our age here, but when the internet first arrived and we were doing dial-up, right?
Yeah.
You longed for the ability to, could just be faster. That would be awesome. Of course, no matter how fast it gets, we'll find a way to
slow it down.
Fill that pipe, if you will,
exactly.
Right? There are technical things going on with ChatGPT that I think are very similar. And so I can't even imagine what's going to happen when those sort of technical issues are resolved. I'm talking really, about just our ability to push data to it on the fly, like massive amount.
I love this framing of that. Like we're in the dial-up phase of AI.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that, right? The other part of it is that you had mentioned like, blockchain and that sort of thing. And it's like almost like a solution in search of a problem. In this case, it's like there's no, this is going to sound crazy, especially for somebody who was like so, negative about AI in general, but it's almost like you tell me something you couldn't apply this to.
Right. It's the opposite.
Right? Exactly. So I think that where the opportunity is in like, well, what domain do you have like expertise in that you can apply it
Exactly.
to, right? I'm not a financial guy. I mean, my degree was in computer science and I had a information systems concentration. So I had exposure to all the crazy accounting terms and all that stuff. And just being in the business long enough, you start to pick stuff up. What's a balance sheet, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's been interesting, right? Because again, like what I see in the NetSuite space is that that's one really hot thing you can do to, like, you can apply AI to, and people are just eating that up. So there's that.
Mm-hmm.
But so it sounds like green field, sunshine and rainbows and unicorns jumping all around, and it is crazy. Like I can tell you, I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah.
Even like when the e-com thing was blowing up in the 90s and, things were overvalued and people were making job offers that were insane before they even talked to you. And here's a car, that's really how it was.
Somebody just got a $1.5 billion deal with Meta to leave thinking machines.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Right? Like, is anything even worth that much? But certainly, whatever. Like,
maybe
again, another conversation and
right.
It's just,
it's frothy. So let's just say it's frothy.
Really, yeah, and risky and scary. But what I am seeing, and again, I'm talking about a time frame where it started in July.
Mm-hmm.
It's changed, like in the NetSuite space with AI, it has already changed so much, so quickly, that you could say that you were one of the first movers in that space, but it doesn't mean anything because the technology's changing out every day where you're like, oh crap, I need to figure that out now too, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that thing I was working on over there.
Yeah.
And so when I started to talk about I was building a product, that's literally what happened to me. The day I was about to announce the product, I got an early email about, hey, we're about to drop something at around 10 o'clock this morning. And I was like, oh God, I didn't know what it was, but So yeah, there's a lot of pivoting.
Well, so here's a funny, just visual that popped into my head. Is like people use the word platform a lot, but I don't think they always. It's like you should take it literally when you think about applying it to a software, air quotes, platform. If the platform is unsteady, even if it's from rapid development and rapid iteration and it's getting better and better and better, it's not really a platform yet because it's not stable. You can't stand on it. It's more like a ship, and you're like wobbling all over the place and grabbing onto the mast and trying not to fall overboard. But it's this constant relearning and you don't know what to depend on because, it's nothing to build on yet, really, because it's changing too fast.
Mm-hmm.
So what can you do? You can help people kind of like try and keep up with that. You can find early wins that are like, even if it does change, it doesn't matter because this is going to be so valuable in the 3 months that it works that no one's going to care. And then you're just going to there's going to be a lot of rebuilding. And then eventually someday it'll turn into a platform. Like I remember talking to people about, back in the day, just for another parallel. And I think the website's even called webplatform.org or something like that. And I was like, that's the wrong name. The web's not the platform. The web is a place. The browser is the platform.
Yeah.
So and you could argue that some of the underlying HTTP, and TCP/IP, and those are sort of protocol. They're protocols, so it's not really. It's like a platform that you can build on, but really the browser was the platform. Yeah. And right now we're in the phase of AI, the earliest possible phase of like Microsoft Internet Explorer and Netscape fighting it out.
Right.
They're new feature. Right. And they're just racing each other. I mean, it's in the headlines. They're racing each other. They're like, they're poaching each other's employees and trying to release stuff before maybe it's even really ready, rushing things to market. And it's going to be totally chaotic how long did it last with Netscape? I mean,
not very long.
It was a few years though, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
but there was a lot of money involved there too, right?
Right. The battle for
fortunes were made.
Yeah, the battle for the window to the internet. So yeah, and even though there was people were like, oh, this is another bubble, and it's like, well, Google came out of that bubble. Everything came out of the bubble. Facebook, like everything came out of that bubble. So it's not like saying it's a bubble means this will crash and burn. It just means like there'll be a lot of businesses that get started that don't make it because they don't have good fundamentals, or the timing's wrong, or whatever. They're too early, or they're too late. Anyway, I don't think we need to convince people that AI is a big thing. But so what is your what is a question? Like, what's a good question around this? Like, how to hold onto the mast while the ship is being tossed
from you to you?
Yeah. Like, what's a big challenge, or like, what are you not sure about?
Well, I think when I reached out to you, I realized that I was kind of moving into this weird, like, instead of being the SuiteQL guy, the NetSuite AI guy, and people actually have referred to me that way too, which is interesting and weird. So the authority is there, right? Whether I
positioning,
did it somewhat intentionally, and then the question is like, how can I leverage that? And at the same time, I love what I'm doing as far as my day job, writing code.
Yep.
How do I leverage it, make money on it, provide services on it without going from, working 50 hours a week back up to 70 or whatever? Like, how do I do that? So how do you do it without killing yourself?
Right.
And then there's all the, like, again, it's interesting being on here because I really am an introvert. Probably don't sound like it, but I am. I'm not a people person. So I know the things I don't want to do. Right? I have started to realize that I think the way to kind of use this new authority or whatever, to leverage it, is to just sort of do things that feel right to me. It's almost like finding the right ways to market yourself.
Yeah.
I'm never going to make a cold call.
No.
Right? I'm not that guy. And if you get me up in front of a group of people and it's like a speaking engagement, probably do it, but I'll probably be scared to death. So that doesn't feel good to me. So the question is very similar. Like, how do you use that authority in ways that feel right, that really truly add value? Before we started, recording, I had said, something to you about, like, I feel like I want to write like books and stuff like that. I'm doing consultations already and making more money on those than, like, it's crazy. And maybe some like training, but I'm not sure, like what that looks like,
right. Yeah. Okay. So here's I have to put you on the spot, because it's like you've got this lever that has been dropped into your hands.
Yeah.
What is the car you're trying to lift? So like, so how do I use this leverage? Well, it depends on what you want to lift. Right. So what would be the goal? Is the goal just to give you like a broad spectrum, is the goal to make so much money in the next 18 months that you retire? Or is the goal to help the maximum number of people not blow their foot off wasting time on this thing? Or is the goal to justify the existence of AI to people who, like you, were anti, and they're just ignoring it, in your opinion, at their peril? Like, what's the mission? What's the vision?
I think the first two, sounds like a cop-out, but a little bit of the first two, which is I'd love to help as many people out as I can and make money doing it. Like, I can't afford, and I think, you probably have identified this in me and probably other people, I can't afford to keep giving things away for free. And I'm not just talking about software, my time mostly. Right. So at least I'm starting to charge for that. I won't just, in the past, like, get one of those emails where it's, hey, I'd love to pick your brain about blah, 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 from somebody I don't even know. Or worse, somebody I do who knows how busy I am. I don't know what's worse, right? So
how dare you?
Like, right, there's got to be some give and take there. So at least I'm doing that. I have thought about, writing some books and stuff like that. I don't know. Yeah, like, you don't write books to make money. You write books usually to build your authority. Right. Yeah. And that's the last thing I want.
Yeah.
Which sounds crazy, but I don't.
But you would it sounds like you would like some kind of hands-off recurring revenue, no touch, low touch sales and delivery. So generally speaking,
that's kind of what I've been thinking about, like, how do I do that?
Okay. So there's main way you would do that is through some kind of digital info product. A second way that you might consider doing that, but it's not zero touch, would be to create some kind of a community, an ongoing subscription type of thing, where you are the impresario, let's say, not a good fit for your personality type, but
Yeah.
if you're known as the thought leader, that's probably enough. And you could, the pitch would be something like, look, this stuff is changing so fast that the best that we could possibly do for each other is constantly compare notes about what's working.
Mm-hmm.
It's way too soon to write a book. It may never make sense to write a book about this. I remember writing web publishing with PHP and FileMaker 9. And the book came out right around the time FileMaker 10 came out. And I was like, I'm never putting a version number in a book title again.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure. And it feels like, even if you self-published, so unless these were booklets, like real short, specific, my top 10 prompts for 2025 from NetSuite AI, and it's 30 pages long and you charge $20 for it or something, unless it's something like that you can update every year, or is not 200 hours and 18 months, 200 hours of your time plus 18 months of back and forth with a publisher like O'Reilly.
Yeah.
It almost, the idea of a book at this stage, there will be a perfect time to do it. Like the iPhone came out in 2007 and I had a book published on it 3 years later, almost to the day.
Wow.
And it was the perfect timing.
Mm-hmm.
But that's physical hardware, and it is an OS,
right?
That they're only going to change once a year, maybe twice. There's going to be minor updates, and they're really only going to change it very few. It's just stable. It's going to be stable.
Right.
None of this stuff is stable. So the idea of taking 18 months to do a book doesn't make sense.
It's more like 18 days.
Right.
I mean,
right.
The other part of it is you've got both NetSuite changing, you've got the LLMs changing, the technology
ocean's just all over the place.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So there's no platform.
And you also don't know who else is going to come in and rock the world. Right.
So if you're not trying to attract clients and you're trying to do like a low touch monetization, a way to leverage it this might be draining for you, but initially, so you said you've been doing some consultations, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one-on-one or with one company.
So I think those sort of live, real-time, highly contextual conversations is probably where you'll be able to deliver the most value.
Yeah.
Even though you're not promising them anything, you're just like, here's what I would do in that. So tell me your situation. Okay, here's what I would do. Or here are the 3 things I would try. Here's how I might test them. And, some like sort of basic stuff, but it's Greek to them. Like they don't know where to start. They don't know who to trust.
Obvious to us, but not necessarily to
Right, but highly contextualized for not just their business case, but the current state of NetSuite and AI.
Right.
So one way to sort of leverage that up a level would be to do some group version of that. It's a live consultation. It could be a live Q&A with a group of people for $500, 20 people can come on here on Friday. I'm just going to maybe do a presentation, maybe do some basic stuff, but probably they don't even need that. Maybe you have a little bit of a presentation, but it's like 2 hours of Q&A. Maybe it's a workshop where they really spend time bringing problems and they're working with each other.
Yeah.
As much as they're working with
seminar,
you. Kind of like that, but like definitely not Sage on stage, you talking and them just taking notes. It's probably there'd be more interactive than that, but in a group instead of a one-off. So let's say you're charging $2,000 for a one-off NetSuite AI strategy call. And instead you charge $995 for 10 people, so you make $10,000 on a Friday morning.
Yeah.
Where you get this group of people, they're early adopters. Maybe it turns into a mastermind. Like maybe that's part of the thing where you're like, I'm going to gather 10 people per mastermind or roundtable, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to sort of handpick them, or they can apply and you handpick them. You put them together with their non-competitive industries. They're all using NetSuite, and you do this initial kickoff with them. And then you just let them run with it. And here's the plan. You meet periodically remotely. Twice a year, you get together in person at somebody's office. You take turns doing it. And after a year or 2 years, whatever, they just pay you to set the thing up, make the matchmaking thing, and then they're off on their own.
Right.
Just like, that's a crazy idea, but I think
No,
anything.
I think it's a good one. Right? It's very ad hoc, and I feel like that's kind of how this whole thing is anyway.
I think it needs to be that way for a while.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. Yeah, I don't know from one day to the next. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Like,
right. So wouldn't it be nice to have a group of 10 people who are all kind of wrestling with the same stuff, and like ChatGPT or OpenAI makes a new announcement, and everyone's like, has anybody had a chance to put hands on this yet? What do you think about it? What applications do you guys think you might be using, or gals? And just have that kind of trusted community where it's small enough that people will share kind of state secrets from person to person, but they're not in competitive industries. So it's not feeling like we need to keep stuff close to the vest. So, I mean, that's one idea.
I love that.
A community of like 100 people that have some, like an ongoing Slack room or a circle community where you're like, hey, I'm going to open up 100 seats and we're just going to figure this out. Like, it's going to be changing like crazy. And it's, maybe it's $3,000 a year, or I don't even know, like, 200. Yeah. I mean, that's not that much. That's nothing for like core people, like who would the people be, like CTOs or lead devs? Or
I think it would be a little bit of everyone. And I'm basing that on just the feedback and the questions I get, through LinkedIn already. It's surprising to me, like just the breadth of like the titles that I see. Sometimes they're NetSuite admins, sometimes they're more in an accounting or a finance role, sometimes they're developers. Again, that kind of goes back to the fact that, like, with ChatGPT, you could put that in just about anybody's hands. They want to try something, right? And so I think part of like where I see, and I love the idea, not necessarily of the bigger group, because like you said, that's probably would scare me to death, but the group of like 10, like a more collaborative and sort of tight group, is that there's a lot of education that needs to go on with this. And it's not just technical. There was something that was posted, I think, on Hacker News the other day about how, like you've got workers who are taking sort of proprietary and information that shouldn't be out there and just feeding it to ChatGPT, right? With
security angle.
Yeah. So that's a huge thing. I mean, depending on the nature of the company, and you've got a lot of issues there. So you need to educate people on that. And so, there's a lot of opportunity, I think, there. And I love the idea of that small group, because that's what it feels like the community should be doing. We should be sharing these things.
Right. Comparing notes in a secure environment because it's going to be so fluid for a long time. I mean, it's almost like, how could it slow down? I almost don't even know.
I don't know.
Like, some of the platforms would need to mature, or someone would need to, or but someone would specialize in like one that doesn't update that much, like maybe version 3 of Llama self-install or something like that. But that sounds ridiculous just to even say.
Well, but not necessarily. So one of the things I'm seeing, and again, I think we grew up in this weird IT industry, right? Is with NetSuite, it reminds me of, like, I'll pick on Mac OS specifically. There was a time where you could pick, I'll go way back, System 7, but Mac OS, and it didn't come baked in with here's your email client, here's your calendar, and all that, right? So you could pick and choose, and you still can, but why bother? And I think with NetSuite, based on what was announced at Suite World last week, I think it's the same thing, right? Like, there are those of us who have been trying to fill gaps in the platform as far as AI goes, but I think NetSuite is going to fill them anyway. And I wrote about this as a LinkedIn article. It was sort of like, it doesn't matter how good your alternative version is. NetSuite, it's their platform. They've got the mind share, and so there's that part of it too, right? It is moving so fast. I've never seen anything like it. It's the past 3 or 4 months have just been a blur.
Yeah. So I wonder if what'll happen with NetSuite is, as they, I have no idea what the announcements are, but I wonder if it'll be something kind of akin to WordPress.com hosting, where they standardize on a version and they slow things down on purpose so it does feel more like a stable platform and not like a pirate ship that's flying all over the place. And like plugins, like what is allowed to be used inside of the platform is vetted by the owner, NetSuite in this case, and it slows the craziness down inside of NetSuite. Like it'll still be crazy outside, but if the default has become, now it's every 6 months, maybe you can expect an update to the AI features inside of NetSuite. Then it becomes okay. Now I'm thinking that might make sense because you personally will probably get a chance to beta test it. And then you could start to put together like a very straightforward workshop. You could teach the workshop a few times once the thing is announced, or to other beta testers to sort of train the trainer, like FileMaker days.
Right.
And sell that as a course. And then maybe it gets updated every 6 months or whatever, but that's like a very, very hands-off, it's a series of videos that, is once things slow down a little bit, then you can start, it makes sense to put 40 hours into something that's going to sell for 6 months.
Right. Yeah. That's a really good point. But yeah, it is interesting. And some of the things that they did announce, I think, are already sort of stomping on the toes of people who were diligently building things to fill it, myself included. And so you wonder, like, how much effort should you put in to like filling a gap that tomorrow might not be there or filled by somebody else.
Right.
And it's pretty exciting.
Oh, I'm sure it's almost overwhelmingly so.
Yeah.
Sometimes, so there's some platforms that this is probably, who knows if this will ever happen in this particular case, but like the example I'm thinking of is Shopify. They have like publicly stated, or maybe internally stated to their developers, their developer ecosystem, that they're never going to use fractional quantities, that it's baked into the core platform. There's a core assumption that the smallest quantity is 1. You can't sell a half of something. You can't sell a half pound. You can't sell it. Right. And so there's at least I've talked to at least one plugin developer who essentially supports fractional quantities for people that sell like yards of fabric or, pounds of
units
coffee.
Units of measure.
Yeah. Alternate, fractional units of measure. And so there might be something where NetSuite publicly says, we're carving off this piece that we're never going to touch for a variety of reasons. And then that's fair game. It's hard to picture what that might be, or if they'll ever get to that point, or how long it'll be before they get to a point where they're like, we're never touching, like we supply a direct integration between NetSuite and like Claude Code, or like a specific one. And we're never going to integrate with ChatGPT for public reasons, financial reasons. We're not going to do it. The deal with Anthropic prevents it for 3 years. So then, okay, maybe there's a space where you're like, well, using ChatGPT and you want to use ChatGPT with NetSuite, maybe there's a workshop or a book in that. But
the irony is that that's actually one of the things that, like 2 weeks ago, that they actually did open it up beyond just Claude to ChatGPT. So so it's funny that you brought that up. I should ask you, like, what else can you look into the future and predict and have tomorrow's lottery numbers? I'm being funny, but
I mean, I think
it's hard to know.
The key piece, I think, is it's always a balance of like, how much do you want to put on the table?
Yeah.
So
it's a risk,
right? You're always going to be taking a risk. So like, you can get Sherlocked, or the platform can change underneath you. The air quotes platform, the platform's going to change underneath you. So it doesn't make sense to put a 200-hour ante on the table to write a book. Like that would be a bad bet. So what you want to look for is small bets that you can make a lot of, that have low downside and potentially high upside. And if you can make 10 of those and one of them hits, then great. You just make 10 more, one of them hits, make 10 more, one of them hits. So in this case, it seems like trying a lot of little things. And the two obvious ways to create leverage is by taking what you're learning from the one-on-one AI calls, any patterns that you see, anything, even if it's like a pattern of 2. Like I had talked to 2 different people, they both had the same problem. It's not scientifically, it's not significant, but it's worth a notice, and then it's like, okay, there's two obvious ways to scale it that are extremely low effort, very small info products, or group things of some kind where you are the facilitator, even maybe not even the trainer, but just like someone who match makes 5 or 10 people for $3,000 for a year, and you're not even in those meetings after the first couple, or community, or all these other things. So it's like, high touch, one-to-many group stuff, very, no touch, low touch, like no touch info products that are easy for you to create, because you could just almost do them out of the top of your head, just off the top of your head. Like, here's this very specific use case. And then the title of the book is like, how to do this exact thing. And there's nothing else in the book.
Right.
My top 5 prompts for NetSuite, businesses running on NetSuite that are between this and this in terms of, like, I don't know, revenue or something, like crazy specific, almost a blog post that they can pay you $20 for.
Yeah. It's interesting that you brought some of that up, because after looking at the announcements from SuiteWorld and what is coming, it's going to be native to the platform in the next 12 months or so. That's what they're saying. That has rocked the world of a lot of people that were working on things. And I wrote a blog post about that and said that, whether NetSuite realizes it or not, they're now competing with a lot of companies that were working diligently on AI solutions. And I had written some things about, like, well, what you can potentially do to sort of help, navigate around that. And one of them, and it reminded me of some of the things you've talked about, is sort of niching down. So if, like, NetSuite's going to add, I'll call them AI agents. That's a very vague term, and your listeners might know what that is. But if they're going to add that in a generic way, and you are a subject matter expert in, I don't know,
logistics,
supply chain type stuff, whatever it happens to be, maybe NetSuite never gets that detailed.
Right.
And so there's still a place for you. And it might not be what you thought it was when you're thinking there's 43,000 companies. Maybe now you're focused on 1,000. Still a lot of, I couldn't handle that.
No,
I'd like to,
yeah.
if I could do it in a way that's scaled and whatever. But so I think that's also an option. I don't know that it's an option for me, but maybe. I don't really consider myself a subject matter expert in anything like that, where I could say, and it wouldn't be authentic even if I did, like
it could be
tariffs is another one, right? Like, I'm not the tariff guy. Like, don't ask me.
Right. So it could be, first of all, that's exactly right. I think if you, like, part of the arc of a platform, which you've brilliantly navigated by leaping to smaller and smaller, sub segments, sub hype cycles inside of the platform. This one happens to correspond to an external hype cycle. The SQL one didn't.
Right.
So
that's the difference,
right.
I think.
So the overall arc of a platform is usually that they end up Sherlocking all of their developers, all of their partners. Eventually, they want to monopolize they want all that. Eventually, in order to grow, once their regular market peaks, then they're like, okay, we're going to start taking all this money from the people who helped us get here. That's all the time. Look no further than Facebook or what, you just name the platform. So the thing that they won't do, kind of like we were saying, like there might be something that they explicitly say they're not going to do, like Shopify not doing fractional units. They're never going to specialize down on building out a really strong feature for just one of their verticals. They're almost certainly only going to do stuff that can be used more generically across all of their verticals. So picking a niche, I think, is exactly right. The niche doesn't have to be a vertical, though, like logistics companies or e-com or liquor stores or whatever. It could be something that's more like...
what I was thinking was something like an industry that's not just a industry, but industries that are regulated, highly regulated.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Whether that's, personally identifiable information or whatever, something
like,
that
do medical practices run on NetSuite, like that kind of thing,
or the fact that it's a publicly traded company, right? Like that's really risky, right? If you're like, hey, we're about to release a 10Q or whatever, it's like, okay, like if I get that a day before, you know what I mean? Like you've got to be really careful with that. So I think that those may be areas that they broadly cover because they probably have to from a legal standpoint. But if you really get down to the nitty gritty, they might be like, okay, we've checked the boxes, but there's still like miles to go to really say that you are,
right,
legal, if you will, and doing it the right way. So I've never been at a point where the industry is shifting, and it goes, what we're talking about with, like my NetSuite platform specialization is one thing, but I would be willing to guess that you could find a Tim in the SAP world, or just pick something.
Yeah, or Salesforce.
Right?
Yeah.
Salesforce. There's probably also their AI strategies are probably different and yet the same, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like just broadly. So there's probably a lot of platform, whether you're a professional that's working on one and has that specialization, or you're a partner, or I would imagine the conversations that like the one we're having, they're probably very similar. And I hope they are. So I hope your like readers or listeners, come away from this with like, yeah, I can see where that, and I'd love to hear about that, by the way. Commiserate,
Yeah. Start our own roundtable.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
So yeah, it's crazy.
So what do you think about those? Like, what's the most attractive of the maybe things I've suggested? What's like the most attractive one? And what's one thing that you could do to move closer to it?
Well, I've thought about the prompt thing and sort of giving out like a prompt pack, not giving it out, but selling it. The challenge there is trying to make those like be broad enough that it does have mass appeal, so it can't be hyper focused. So there's sort of that informational product or whatever, digital product. So I like the idea that I probably will move forward with that.
By the way, you mentioned Amazon. I probably wouldn't put it on Amazon.
No, I don't think that would make sense. Gumroad maybe as a...
Sell it yourself. Yeah, get 100% of the money because it's going to be... Because the point isn't... If you were going to try to attract customers, yes, put it on Amazon because
you'll get that broad reach.
Yeah, it's basically doing SEO, essentially.
Yeah.
Putting a lead magnet on Amazon.
Right.
But that's not what you want. You actually want to increase your bank account without having to do more hours.
Right.
So, so self-publish it.
Yeah. I love the information product, that digital product idea. And then I like the roundtable idea too, because I can think of easily at least 5 people that I, could reach out to and say, hey, I've got this idea. Even if it's just a mastermind, it could be pretty helpful. So I think there's so many opportunities right now, and there already were. That's the crazy thing about NetSuite before AI was hot, and now it's just like on fire. It really is. So yeah, it's been a fun ride.
Wild.
For sure. I really appreciate it. There was one other thing I was going to say to you that I thought might be interesting to you and your listeners. I was actually researching this myself today, but I've started to hear buzz around people saying, hey, I'm starting to get traffic to my site, my blog, whatever, or I'm getting business and referrals from ChatGPT.
Oh, yeah.
And they just announced the thing with they're going to try to sell you stuff through it and you can buy it. That's one thing.
Yep.
So I started, thinking is there an SEO equivalent?
Yes, there is.
And there is. Yeah.
AEO or GEO. It's sort of argued about what the term is, but yeah.
Right. And I was like, well, that's interesting. It's a whole other can of worms, opportunity, whatever. So yeah, I don't think there's any area of tech that's not going to be impacted by this, for better or worse, by the way.
Yeah.
But I think even if you really pull back and you think about society in general, the fact that people, and you said this about your kids, when's the last time did they ever go on Google? Or did they just go to ChatGPT?
So it's funny because they don't distinguish between a web browser or even searching in Safari. They just call it going to Google. Everything, and in school they've got whatchamacallit, Chromebooks, and everything's
so it literally is Google.
It's just Google everywhere. It's just Google. It's not a browser. It's not. They never say Chrome. I don't even think they know what that is.
Right.
It's just Google everywhere, and they just look for the Google icon and oh, there's Google.
Right.
And that's still very, very high usage. And in terms of the AEO, I was just listening to an interview of a guy who runs an SEO agency that's also focusing on this, or has started to focus on, placement in ChatGPT and like what works in those engines. And still the usage number, I mean, like still the Google traffic dwarfs.
Yeah.
And like my site, I looked into it because I wrote a couple of posts about it, and my site, ChatGPT, I forget now, it's on my website, but it was like a year ago, ChatGPT was like number 20 something referrer to my website. Last month, it was number 3 behind LinkedIn and Google. So it's still comically low compared to Google.
Yeah.
But it jumped from nowhere to number 3 in about a year. Yeah. So like, you probably want to keep an eye on that if you're a think tank, any kind of thought leadership position, e-commerce, like you said. I've already seen cards pop up, if you go best, flight to Dallas, and then it's like click right here to book on Travelocity or whatever.
It's like, I guess we're not going to get away from ads no matter what.
No, eventually, do. There's going to be Eventually, there's going to be ads,
and it'll pop up in your dream. It's so crazy. Anyway, so I think that's a good, I just thought I'd bring that up. I think it's interesting to, again, see what the impact of all this is going to be beyond just like Tim and NetSuite. It's like, again, this is far from a solution in search of a problem. It's a solution that I don't know how to describe it. It's like a Swiss Army knife where all the little pieces are, the hammer part that comes up is just as good as any hammer you can buy. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's
like Roger Rabbit, flips out the hammer and it's like real giant mallet.
Inspector Gadget. It's just crazy.
Yeah. So. And I'm not like, just for the record, I think I said it earlier, like if it went away tomorrow, I wouldn't care. To me, it's a productivity thing. I think to other people, they're using it in ways that I think it's really bad at. They're trying to make it good at something that it's really bad at. Yeah. But there are some things that it's really good at that I use all the time, and depends on what level of AI you want to talk about. Like I literally use Grammarly all day, every day. That's totally machine learning AI. You might, and it's Gen AI. It's not even, it's great. It's amazing. I wouldn't want to live without it. But, if it did go away, I don't care. It's like, fine. But if it's out there, I'm going to use it. I don't think it's evil.
Right. I mean, that's the funny thing about we're having this long conversation and talked a lot about AI. I told you how skeptical I was, and I still am to a large extent. I know what it's good at or what I think it's good at. I have seen it, hallucinate, about things it shouldn't have. So that scares me. The phrase I've been using in my blog post is sort of like trust but verify, or whatever that means. The
verification, no, that's 100% true. It's like, I think one of the things it's really good at, not to turn this into an AI conversation, but it's relevant. The things that I find it most useful for are things where I can personally verify the quality of the answer. If I ask it something where I can't personally validate the quality, then I'm wasting my time, because then I might have to go validate it on Google or somewhere else and view all the sources. And then it's just a different search interface, and that's not useful. But when I can have it do something and have it return results that I'm like, yeah, that's great. That's really good. Then the verification loop is real small. That's a productivity increase for sure.
I mentioned I've been doing just so much of the financial analysis with the different, really with Claude more so than ChatGPT. But one of the really interesting things I think that I've been doing is bouncing them off of, if I do the analysis through Claude, I'll run it through ChatGPT as well. It's like going to a doctor, getting an opinion and get a second opinion. I wish I had a third, and I know they're out there, but it's like,
Gemini probably.
I can't keep going. That's enough for now. So anyway,
I had
very interesting.
If people want to listen, I had a long conversation with Alastair McDermott about that kind of thing. Like, how do you deal with the verification loop about stuff where you're not an expert? And he recommended the same thing, which is sort of like get a second opinion and, what's the summary of Moby Dick? And then you say, does this seem like a summary of Moby Dick? And it's like, that's terrible.
That's Jaws. That's the script of Jaws. You're way off.
We're going to need a bigger boat.
Yeah.
So
that's funny. All right.
So where do we, what's the big takeaway here? I guess we've covered a lot of bases.
We have. We went for a long time. As far as the questions that I had for you, I think that was the big one. Before we started talking, I had asked a little bit about what's the difference between jumping from a book to a doing a course, and I think I know your answer to that, but that's not really me.
Yeah.
I guess is kind of when I really think about it. It just doesn't feel right. And like you said, no sooner would I get that course done, even the outline of it, the next day it might be like, oh, throw all that out.
Right.
So yeah, it's a really good point.
If and when things calm down, there's an episode of The Business of Authority that talks about this exactly, with Mike Michalowicz, who has written many books, and his process is to create a workshop for it first, teach it live a few times, get all of the feedback, incorporate that into the lessons, and then turn that into a book. And I love that approach.
Yeah, it's like turning it on its head a little bit. Right?
Yeah,
I always
exactly.
think to go the other way.
Using the workshop to get paid to write the book and make sure the book's going to be good because you got a lot of feedback on the material in real time. It's a great idea, but everything he's writing about is like massively stable areas, like profitability of a small business. Like, it's not specific tactics. It's more like how to organize your books and, profit first, or what, he's got a bunch of different marketing plan books, and like that stuff's more evergreen. So if we ever get to the point where it seems like it's going to slow down, or there's a niche that for some reason, like inside of NetSuite, the versioning is such that you can bet on it for 6 to 12 months, then maybe a workshop.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right. Well, I really appreciate the advice.
I should let you go.
Yeah. Like, I've been following you forever. I've said before, you're like, with maybe the exception of my dad and some of the teachers I had in college, you've been the most influential person to me. So no pressure.
No pressure.
Keep on doing what you're doing, though.
Well, I appreciate it.
I do appreciate it. Yeah.
Me too. It's good to I feel like I repeat myself. I've been repeating myself for 10 years. So it's good to know that people are like, okay, it does actually help.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's helped me. So thanks so much.
Cool. Anytime. My pleasure. We'll have to do a follow-up in 6 months and see where you're at.
Might be 6 weeks. The whole world may have changed. Well, I'll let you know.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on. Where can people go if they want to connect with you online?
So my website is timdietrich.me, timdietrich.me. And the best way to find me is just on LinkedIn, because that's where I'm actually now posting to those articles instead of my own blog.
Oh.
Yeah, because I get, I can actually interact with people and get their comments and stuff. We didn't even talk about any of that, but I actually wrote a book not too long ago that's specifically linked in for basically technical people.
Oh, cool.
I had been working on it for a really long time. And finally, when I started to get that 40,000 day, I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing something right. So, yeah. So,
well, look for that. I know there's a lot of people listening that also would see LinkedIn as their platform if they were going to be on one. So that's probably great.
I think I could, if I had it to do again, I'd just have a real short, like a blog post, like what not to do. It's just a shorter, but yeah. Anyway, well, again, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Hope we do it again soon. All right, folks, that's it for this week. I'm Jonathan Stark, and I hope you join me again next time for Ditching Hourly. Bye.